in another video we saw how relatively easy it is to get started with the Raspberry Pi. This process, however, is a lot less straightforward if we don't have access to a monitor and a keyboard. So today, we're going to go over the steps that are needed in order to set up a Raspberry Pi 4 without access to either of those things. Alright, let's do this. This video is sponsored by PCBWay. They're currently offering a wide variety of deals for the holiday season and the Spring Festival. Make sure to check out their coupons so that you can save while placing your PCB manufacturing and assembly orders with PCBWay. They were kind enough to send me a care package for the holiday season. As always, I was impressed with the high quality of their boards. One thing that sets PCBWay apart is that they're not a broker. Rather, they're a PCB manufacturing and assembly house. With friendly staff and great facilities, I highly recommend PCBWay for your PCB manufacturing and assembly needs. For this video, I'm going to be using a Raspberry Pi 4, a microSD card. Remember to make sure that its capacity is bigger than 8 GB, an official Raspberry Pi case to protect the board, and a USB-C power supply. I'll also use a microSD adapter because my computer doesn't have a direct port for it. The first thing we'll need is the image of the operating system that will be running on the Raspberry Pi. For this video, I'll choose the Raspbian Buster version with a desktop environment. You're welcome to read more about all the other options on the Raspberry Pi website. In my experience, the torrent version downloads quicker than the zip file. In your case, it might be different. Once the download completes, it's time to connect the microSD card to my computer. I'll use both the standard SD card adapter as well as the one that'll connect to the USB port of my computer. To make sure that the card is ready for flashing the image, I'll open the built-in disk utility. If you're on Mac OS X, make sure that under the View menu you select the option Show All Devices. Then select the corresponding volume for USB card. Click on the erase option and fill in the details accordingly. I'll just give it the name SD card and I'll remember to format it using the Microsoft FAT file system format. With the SD card formatted, we're now ready to flash the Raspbian operating system image. There are different tools to do this, but I prefer to use the ones built into the operating system. I'll go ahead and open the terminal, which you can find by doing a simple Spotlight search. We'll change directories into where we downloaded the image, in my case the downloads folder. I'll also copy the name of the image that I want to flash to make my life a little bit easier later. After doing that, I'll have to unmount the disk where I'm flashing the image. I'll use the command line version of the disk utility with the option Unmount Disk for this purpose. We'll need to give it a parameter that corresponds to the volume of the disk where we have the SD card connected. We can easily get this parameter going back to the graphical version of the utility. I'll make sure that the option that I give to the unmount disk operation matches that same device. I can get confirmation that everything worked by seeing the volume disappear from my desktop. Next, we'll use another utility to actually flash the image to the SD card. For using the utility DD, we'll need two different parameters: the location of the image that we want to flash and the location of the disk where we want to flash it to. We'll also need the block size that we want to use. In my case, I'll select 32 megabytes. The flashing should take about 10 minutes. Depending on your system, it might take more or less. Once the flashing is done, we're ready to configure Raspbian so that it works without a monitor or a keyboard. To do that, we'll need to create a couple of text files. Again, you can use several utilities, but I prefer to use the ones that are built into the operating system. I'll go ahead and open Text Edit, and using the Format menu option, I'll select Make Plain Text. This file actually will remain empty. I just need to save it to the SD card with the name SSH and no extension. We can even do a sanity check by opening the volume and making sure that the file is there. We can now move on to the second file. This one will actually contain some text. Specifically, it'll contain all the information that the Raspbian operating system needs to connect to the Wi-Fi network as soon as it boots. Double check that you don't have any typos and that the network credentials correspond to the same network that your computer is connected to. Similar as we did before, we'll save the file to the boot partition. The name of the file has to be wpa_supplicant with the extension .conf. Once again, we can verify that the file was indeed created, and in that case we can use the command line disk utility to eject the SD card. I'll go ahead and place the SD card into the Raspberry Pi, which is probably easier to do before putting the Pi in the case. With that done, we come to the trickiest step of the process. We'll need to find out the IP address that's been assigned by our network to the Raspberry Pi. This varies from system to system, and there are certainly a lot of tutorials available online. I'll show you how to do it for my setup, and even though the steps will be similar, some details will be different for your own. I'll open a browser window and navigate to the IP address of my Wi-Fi router. I'll sign in to the router as an admin so that I can see all the devices that are connected to it. A quick visual search shows me that the Raspberry Pi has been issued the IP address 192.168.1.13. With that out of the way, I can go back to the terminal and use the command line utility SSH. I'll use the default username for Raspbian, which is Pi, the @ and the IP address of the Raspberry Pi on the network. One caveat is that if you've worked with multiple Raspberry Pis on your system, you might see an error like the one I'm seeing now. To solve this, you can edit the known host file and remove the entry for that IP address. I'll use the command line text editor Vim, but you can use whichever one you want. When we try to use SSH again, it'll go through the normal process. We'll answer yes to add this Raspberry Pi to the list of known hosts, and we'll be able to log in to the Raspbian operating system running on the Raspberry Pi. Once we log in, we'll be able to execute commands that will be run on the Raspbian operating system that's running on the Raspberry Pi. For example, we can create a Python script, add a simple print statement, save it, and run it on the Raspbian operating system. We can use other command line utilities like secure copy to send that file to my MacBook. For that, I'll need the IP address of the MacBook and the username that I use on it. If I don't make any mistakes, I can see that the file was indeed copied over. So there you have it. We've successfully solved the issue on how to configure the Raspbian operating system when we don't have access to a monitor or a keyboard. If you like my videos, I invite you to my Patreon page where you can chip in $1 or $2. That really helps me put in more time into the videos and release them quicker. But whatever you do, don't forget to like, subscribe, or leave me a comment. You can also interact with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can even use the community tab of the channel. Thank you for watching my videos, and I will see you next time.